In every shadow, a story waits to be told. Welcome to Dark Eerie Chronicles, where your nightmares become our stories. This terrifying experience has been shared by Daniel and is being narrated by Dark Eerie Chronicles. I still remember the heat, dry, pulsing, like an invisible hand pressing down on your chest with every breath. It was the summer of 1997, and my wife Claire and I had just gotten married. We were in our early 30s, idealistic, curious, maybe a little too curious. Egypt had always fascinated us, especially the parts no one really talked about in guidebooks. We weren't the kind of couple to do the whole pyramids of Giza and back to the Hilton routine. We wanted more, something raw, something untouched. Claire was into archaeology. I was more of a history buff. We figured if we rented a car and stuck to lesser-known villages south of Cairo, we might stumble across something authentic. And we did. God, we did. The town was called Al-Wadi Al-Abyad, the White Valley. It sat at the edge of the western desert, just past the last railway outpost near Beni Suef. You wouldn't find it on tourist maps. The locals at the petrol station didn't know about it, or pretended not to. We reached it late afternoon, the sun melting into the horizon behind dusty ridges and half-dead palm groves. The streets were empty, eerily so. Mud brick houses lined the road, most without windows. A donkey cart passed us once. No cars, no stores, not even a school. Claire leaned over the dashboard, peering through the windshield. "Are you sure this is the right place?" I shrugged. GPS doesn't even cover this area, but the guy in Minya said this town had ruins, pre-dynastic stuff. Let's hope it has a place to sleep. We found one. It was barely a hotel. A 2-story flat-roofed building with a painted sign that simply said, "Guest House." The owner was an old man named Hamza, probably in his 60s. He barely spoke English, but Claire's Arabic was decent. He offered us tea, then led us to our room on the second floor. There were 4 doors in the upstairs hallway, but he pointed to room 3. Others closed. Claire asked something about the others. He just shook his head and mumbled, "Always closed." I should have asked why. We woke up sweating. The ceiling fan barely turned. Claire swore she heard something outside during the night, soft tapping, like knuckles brushing against the wall. "There's probably a rat stuck in the plaster," I said. "Then it's the most polite rat I've ever met." We spent the day walking the outer edge of town, where ancient ruins, mostly limestone walls and collapsed tombs, were half buried in the sand. No signage, no fences, just centuries-old rubble hidden under goat paths and thorn bushes. That night, the sounds came back. This time I heard them too. Tapping, then dragging. Not inside the room, from the hallway. Slow, repetitive. Claire sat up in bed. "Someone's out there," she whispered. I got up and opened the door quickly. The hallway was empty. All 3 other doors were shut. No wind, no creaking. Then I noticed something. The door to room 4, the one at the very end of the hallway, had sand pooled under it, like someone had shoveled it inside. Claire saw it too. Why would there be sand inside the room? I didn't answer. I didn't know how to. Claire talked to Hamza again the next morning. He was less friendly this time, cagey. When she asked about room 4, he shook his head violently. "No room, no guest, no open. You go to ruin, not here." That night, Claire couldn't let it go. She wanted to open room 4. "Think about it," she said, pacing the room. "Why keep a room sealed in a place this dusty? What if it's an ancient chamber, hidden beneath or something?" I was tired, hot, irritated. This isn't Indiana Jones, Claire, but curiosity's a hell of a drug. We waited until after midnight. The hallway was still. Claire had stolen a spare key from Hamza's drawer. I told her it was a bad idea. She smiled and said, "We'll be quick." The key turned with a soft click. The smell hit first, wet stone and decay, like damp earth trapped in a coffin. Inside was not what I expected. The walls were carved, hieroglyphs I didn't recognize, sharper than any we had seen in museums. The room was larger than it should have been, deeper. The walls descended into a sort of stairwell, spiraling downward. Claire was already halfway in when I snapped out of it. "Claire, don't!" She didn't listen. The stairs led to a circular chamber beneath the building, buried in limestone and clay. The air was stifling. Carvings covered every inch of the stone. Some were familiar, ankhs, falcons, suns, but others were wrong, twisted, like human faces warped by agony. A line of symbols encircled the floor. Claire took out her flashlight and aimed it toward the far wall. That's when we saw the figure. A man. No! What had once been a man? Crouched against the wall, skin like parchment, lips missing, eyelids torn off. He wasn't breathing. Claire froze. I stepped forward, and he moved. Not like a human, he slid across the wall without touching the floor. His head turned unnaturally toward us. No eyes, just hollow sockets we felt instead of saw. Claire screamed. I grabbed her and ran. As we reached the stairs, a voice whispered behind us, low, gravelly, ancient. "Leave one behind." We locked the door and didn't sleep. At dawn, we went to Hamza and begged him to let us leave. He didn't look surprised, just nodded. "You open room 4. It takes something now." "What does that mean?" Claire yelled. "What did we do?" Hamza looked at me, then her, then quietly said, "One of you stay, one of you go." We left without paying, packed and drove non-stop to Cairo. Claire didn't speak the whole drive. Claire never talked about what happened that night. Not really. After we left Al-Wadi Al-Abyad, she just closed off. No arguments, no accusations, just silence. Like something inside her had been buried along with that room. For years, she couldn't sleep. She developed this twitch in her hand, started rubbing her thumb against her fingers constantly, like she was trying to rub something off that wasn't there. Some nights I'd wake up and find her staring out the window, whispering, "We shouldn't have opened it. We weren't supposed to see it." Eventually, she left me. No drama, no affair, just faded away. We officially divorced in 2004. She moved to Washington, D.C. and started working at a small university as a research librarian. We stayed in touch for a while, mostly emails, but her messages started to get strange. Rambling references to ancient burial rituals, doorways beneath the earth, and the idea that some knowledge is placed out of reach for a reason. In 2006, she went completely off-grid, quit her job, disconnected her number. Her family filed a missing persons report, but it didn't go anywhere. I moved on. Tried to. Almost 25 years after that trip, I went back. Not for closure. Not even because I missed her. It was more like something unfinished had started pulling at me. I had dreams, strange ones, of sand creeping under doors, whispering in a language I didn't understand. I found Al-Wadi Al-Abyad again. It was still there. The same winding dirt road, the same cracked sign by the guest house. A little older, maybe. Fewer people. The guest house had new paint, but Hamza was still alive. He recognized me. His eyes dropped when I asked about room 4. "All closed. Always closed," he repeated, like a ritual. I asked him directly, "Did you ever see my wife again?" He paused, then he said something in Arabic that chilled me, because I understood it this time. Some people go too deep. They don't always come back. He let me stay the night. I took room 3 again. Same fan, same creaky floor. That night, I heard the sounds again. Soft dragging, a dull tapping. I opened the door quickly and saw a woman standing at the far end of the hallway. Back turned. Still. She looked Just like Claire. I whispered her name. She didn't move. I stepped forward, but in the blink of an eye she was gone. Not like she vanished. Just wasn't there. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning before I left, Hamza gave me something. A small parcel wrapped in linen. No explanation. Just handed it to me and nodded. Inside was Claire's old leather notebook. The same one she used to carry everywhere. Her handwriting filled the pages, notes on glyphs, drawings, coordinates. But the last page, just a single sentence, written shakily. It's not haunted, it's hidden. And below it, the date we opened that door. I asked Hamza how he got it. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "She came back once, alone. She stayed in room 4. She asked me not to tell anyone." Chilled to my bone, I asked, "Where is she now?" I asked. He just walked away. This story has been submitted by Tariq and is being narrated by Dark Eerie Chronicles. You ever feel like you walked into something way older than time? A place that feels like it remembers more than it should? Like something that was just waiting for someone to come knocking. This happened in the winter of 1991. I was 23, studying history at the American University, hunting for something to impress my thesis supervisor. Most of my friends were doing papers on medieval Europe, Napoleonic Wars, that kind of stuff. Me? I was obsessed with Egypt's forgotten towns. That's how I ended up in Daraa, a forgotten little town in Upper Egypt. You've probably never heard of it. Even most Egyptians haven't. Just a cluster of buildings off the Nile, about an hour south of Komombo. You'd miss it if you blinked driving past. Not a tourist stop, no cruise boats. Just a couple of donkey carts, stray dogs, and dusty rooftops. But Daraa, it's old. Older than it looks. And the locals? They talk about things they don't put in tourist brochures. People whisper about the Al Garkhana tombs, underground burial chambers, sealed centuries ago after a plague wiped out a whole section of the town. Nobody goes near the ruins now. The story goes, the plague wasn't natural. They say the town elders sealed the tombs not to protect the dead from the living, but the other way around. I thought it was folklore. Urban legend, you know? Good material for a unique paper. I discussed it with my professor, and he didn't even blink. "As long as it's well researched," he said. "Just don't get cursed or whatever." I laughed then. I took the overnight train from Cairo to Aswan, then a rundown bus to Daraa. The moment I stepped off, the air felt wrong, dry but heavy, like breathing through gauze soaked in dust. The town was all cracked walls and faded paint, with kids running barefoot through alleys and old men playing dominoes outside tea stalls. People stared at me, hard. I wasn't the first stranger they'd seen, but I was definitely the first one with a leather satchel full of notes and a Nikon camera around his neck. I checked into the only guest house in town. It was above a tea house run by an old man named Abu Salim. He had cloudy eyes, a missing tooth, and that silent way of watching that made you feel like you were already in trouble. When I told him I was researching the tombs, he went still, like frozen. "You're a student?" he asked. "History major," I said, trying to sound confident. He didn't answer right away. Then he just said, "Keep to your room after sunset." Then, after a pause, "There are things in this town," he said without making eye contact, "that never went to sleep." I smiled politely. "You mean snakes? Scorpions?" He just shook his head. "No, Bala. Curses. The kind you don't see until it's too late." That first night, I walked the town, spoke to a few people, mostly older folks. They all reacted the same way. The minute I brought up the tombs, they'd clam up. One old woman actually spat in the dirt and whispered, "La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah," A few others just walked away. But on day 2, I got lucky. I found this young guy, maybe my age, named Mahmoud. He was in his mid-20s, worked at the mosque. Friendly, curious, a little reckless. He said he knew where the tombs were, about a 20-minute walk from the edge of town. "You really want to see that place?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "I'm not here for selfies, man. It's research." He smiled faintly, like I was too stupid to understand something obvious. "There's an entrance," he told me, "but it's sealed. No one goes near it, not even the goats." "Why?" I asked. He paused, then said, "People hear things from under the ground." I laughed. "Like what? Voices?" "No." He looked at me, dead serious. "Breathing." I ignored him, thinking this was all rubbish. How could all these people be living here if something so sinister is beneath the surface? We went that afternoon, walked through dry fields and past the remnants of crumbling stone walls. Then we reached it, a half-buried archway built into a mound. It was cracked, overgrown, and half-buried. Looked like nothing at first, but then I saw the symbols etched above it, ancient, older than pharaonic script. I didn't recognize them. I snapped a photo thinking it'd be a great reference. "What do they say?" I asked. Mahmoud shrugged. "Nobody knows. Some say it's the tongue of the drowned." "The what?" I asked. "The ones who made this," Mahmoud said, his voice low, "weren't normal. The Oxelgarkeen, the drowned ones." "You mean aliens?" I laughed. He didn't. "Not aliens, not jinn even. Something else. The old ones. You ever heard of the Oxelgarkeen? People say they're older than Egypt, that they came before men." He was dead serious, and I hadn't. But I lied and nodded. He glanced at the sky. The sun was setting fast. "Let's go back," he insisted. That night I couldn't sleep. The guest house was dead quiet except for the occasional hoot of an owl. Then, around 2 a.m., I heard something. Footsteps, not outside, inside. Slow, dragging. I sat up, nothing at first. Then, a knock. Not on my door, but on the wall. Hollow, like someone knocking from inside it. I froze. Maybe it was pipes. Old buildings creak, right? Then came another knock. Louder, closer. I got up, heart thumping, and opened the door. The hallway was empty, but the light bulb was swinging like someone had just passed underneath it. Next morning, I asked Abu Salim if he had other guests. He stared at me. "No one's here but you." I decided to go back to the tombs, alone. I know, stupid. I returned alone with my flashlight, camera, notebook, and a crowbar. I figured if the tombs were sealed, I might be able to get a peek inside without doing any real damage. Just enough to satisfy my academic curiosity. I found a weak spot where the stone had crumbled. After some work, I got it wide enough to crawl through. The second I entered, the air changed. Cold, damp. It didn't smell like rot. It smelled like wet stone and rusted blood. The flashlight flickered as I moved through narrow corridors. The walls were smooth but not clean, stained with old watermarks and soot. There were carvings, none like anything I'd ever studied. Not Egyptian, not Nubian, not even Mesopotamian. They looked almost biological, like something grown, not carved. Eventually, I came to a central chamber, large, round, and in the middle a deep circular pit with a stone lid on top. It was covered in dried reddish symbols. Some looked smeared. I should have left, but curiosity kills smarter people than me. I used the crowbar to lever up the edge of the lid. Inside, bones, not human, long, twisted. The skull, if you could call it that, was elongated, eye sockets, too many, like 3 sets stacked, and wrapped around the skeleton's chest was a mask, copper, smooth, with hollow eyes. I reached in, That's when something grabbed my wrist. I screamed, dropped the flashlight. It rolled, casting wild shadows across the walls. The grip on my wrist was ice cold. It didn't feel like a hand. It felt like wet rope tightening. I yanked my arm back. Whatever it was, let go. I stumbled backward, slipped, hit my head. Blackout. I don't know how long I was out. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. When I came to, the flashlight was dead. My head was pounding. I felt a sharp pain on my wrist. Looked down and saw a bruise. Long, like finger marks, but there were 6. I scrambled out, didn't even close the tomb, ran straight back to town. Back at the guest house, Abu Salim took one look at me and muttered a prayer under his breath. "What did you do?" he asked. "I think I saw something," I stammered. "Down there, something not human." He didn't ask questions, just gave me tea. Told me to stay in my room. I didn't sleep that night, because at around 2:30 a.m. I heard it again, breathing, right outside my door. Long, wet, guttural. I held my breath, listened. Then, scratching, on the door, like nails dragging across wood. I was frozen, couldn't move, couldn't even scream. And then, one word, whispered. Tariq. I must have passed out because I woke up to daylight and the sound of knocking. Real knocking. Abu Salim. He told me to leave. Today. Now. No arguments. I packed. But as I zipped up my bag, I saw something in the mirror. On my neck, carved faintly into my skin, was the same symbol from the tomb wall. Not a tattoo. Not paint. It was burned into me. I left Dara that afternoon, took the train to Aswan, then flew back to Cairo. I never turned in the thesis. I dropped the course, switched majors entirely. To this day, I don't know what I saw. I don't know what followed me out of that tomb. And since that incident for years when I lay in bed, I used to hear it again, breathing. Not from the window, not from the hallway, from inside the walls. And once, just once, I swear I saw the copper mask in the corner of my room, just standing there, watching. Until some odd 12, 13 years ago, I mustered the courage to share this incident with a friend, who then advised me to see a spiritual man to conduct a cleansing ritual on me, which finally rid me of the haunting whispers of Dara. But this is not the disturbing part. You want to know what's really disturbing? I went back to check last year. I didn't hear any whispers anymore, but I couldn't shake the feeling. Perhaps I was still curious, maybe to prove it wasn't real. Whatever it was, I needed closure. But when I got to Dara, there was nothing there. No guest house, no tomb, no town. Just desert. Like it never existed. Like it was never meant to be found again. This story has been submitted by Kareem and is being narrated by Dark Eerie Chronicles. I still remember the smell of the air that morning. Dry, metallic. A blend of dust, diesel, and distant wood smoke drifting in from village ovens. It was the winter of 2003. I was 26. A fresh graduate in archaeology from Cairo University, eager to leave the archives and actually dig into the past. I had taken a temporary research position with a small French-Egyptian excavation team stationed near Fayoum, a few hours southwest of Cairo. Now, Fayoum. It's not your average postcard Egypt. No pyramids shining in golden glory with hordes of tourists clicking photos. No, Fayoum is harsher, quieter. The kind of place where sand creeps into your clothes and eyes, and thoughts. And just a little south of that desert expanse lies something the textbooks barely even whisper about. The Pyramid of El Ka'ab. You won't find El Ka'ab on most maps. Hell, even in the ministry's archives there's barely a paragraph. What we knew, at least what we thought we knew, was that El Ka'ab was built sometime during the 5th dynasty, around 2400 BC. for a high priest named Akhmen-Ra, not a pharaoh, just a man of great spiritual authority. The locals called it Haram el-Mal'un, the cursed pyramid. The story went that Akhmen-Ra wasn't just a priest, he was a sorcerer, a practitioner of dark rites that even the ancient Egyptians feared. They say he made a pact with the gods of the underworld, that when he died, his soul didn't pass into the afterlife. Instead, he remained buried, but awake, guarding some secret no one was meant to find. They say 13 workers died sealing the final stone. 13! And that the pyramid was never completed. Like it was built not to honor a man, but to trap something in. It should have been left alone. We got there on a Wednesday morning. I remember it was cloudy, rare for Fayum, the kind of sky that hangs low like a warning. There were 6 of us. Me, Dr. Lemoine, our lead French archaeologist, his assistant Claire, a translator named Hani, 2 local laborers, Basim and Farouk, and an old man who acted as our guide. The old man's name was Youssef. He must have been close to 80. He wore this beaten-up galabeya and carried prayer beads. He only spoke when spoken to, and even then, barely more than a few words. When we first approached the pyramid, I didn't feel anything unusual. No sense of doom. It was just quiet, oddly quiet. No birds, no wind, just the sound of our boots crunching gravel. The pyramid itself didn't look like much. It was squat, maybe 30 feet tall. No shine, just matte limestone darkened with age. But there was something about it. It didn't feel like it was ruined. It felt like it had been abandoned, on purpose. Youssef stopped a few meters short of it and refused to go any further. "Don't disturb it," he muttered. "Let sleeping things sleep." We should have listened. The first couple of days were uneventful. Mostly external surveys, taking photographs, brushing off centuries of dust. I remember joking with Claire about how boring it was. "This cursed pyramid is more like a cursed nap," I told her. Then, on the 3rd night, Basim disappeared. We had all turned in around 10. Our camp was set up in a half circle about 50 meters from the pyramid. Just before sunrise, I woke up to shouting. Farouk was stumbling into the main tent, panicked, crying out, "Basim, he's gone!" We searched the area. No signs of struggle, no blood, just his boots, neatly placed by the pyramid's base, as if he had taken them off and walked in barefoot. That's when Dr. Lemoine decided to enter. We found the entrance on the eastern side, half buried. A narrow, slanted shaft no wider than a crawl space. It reeked like old meat and stagnant water. Hani gagged. I wanted to back out right then, but pride can be a dumb thing. It took us 10 minutes to crawl in. The shaft opened into a long, low corridor. No carvings, no artwork, just blank, dead stone. The air was damp, unnatural, like we were inside something alive. That's when we saw the first anomaly. Handprints, faint, smudged all over the walls. Some small, some impossibly large. Not painted, pressed, as if people had tried to push their way out. And at the end of that corridor, a sealed stone door. Claire ran her fingers along the edges. "There's no lock," she whispered. "It opens from the inside." Lemoine, despite everything, smiled. "Then someone wants us to come in." He pushed. The stone slid open with an awful groan, and for a second I swear the air shifted, like something exhaled. Inside was a chamber, octagonal, symmetrical, and completely empty, except for a stone slab in the center. On the slab, a single object, a canopic jar. You know, the ones they use to store organs. But this one was different. Black basalt, no markings, cold to the touch, and sealed with what looked like wax. Claire reached for it. "Don't," I said. She paused, smiled, and shrugged. "You scared, Karim?" I don't know," I replied. Something's wrong." Then the lights went out. We had torches, sure. But the second the generator died, everything changed. I can't explain it. The chamber felt thicker, heavier, like we weren't alone anymore. Farouk screamed. He pointed at the wall. There was something there, a face. We rushed out, stumbling over each other in the dark. That crawl space felt 3 times as long on the way back. When we finally got out, it was already dusk. And there, just outside the pyramid, stood Yusef, silent, eyes full of sadness. "You broke the seal," he said. I didn't understand what he meant. Not until that night. Everyone had nightmares, vivid, violent ones. Claire dreamt of a voice calling her name from inside the jar. Hani saw a figure standing at the foot of his bed. Lemoine stopped speaking altogether. He just sat outside the tent, staring at the pyramid. And by morning, Farouk was gone too. We found his flashlight outside the chamber. Still warm, Dot. That was it. I was done. I told Lemoine we needed to leave. "You can leave if you want," he said. "But I'm staying. We've touched something ancient, Karim. Something pure." Claire agreed. "There's more here. I feel it." I begged them. Hani too. But in the end, only Hani came with me. Yusef was gone. A week passed then too. No word from the site. I tried reaching the local police, the Antiquities Authority. Nothing. It was as if that part of the desert had been swallowed whole. Finally, I went back. Alone. What I found chilled me to my bones. The tents were there, but torn, abandoned. The generator was destroyed, and the entrance sealed, perfectly sealed. No sign of digging. As if it had never been opened. Except for one thing. Near the base of the pyramid, 3 pairs of boots, neatly placed, side by side. I left Egypt not long after that. But last year, out of morbid curiosity, I looked up El Ka'ab again. There was still no official record of it, but I did find a photo. An old one, black and white, dated 1922. A different expedition. 6 men standing outside the same pyramid. In the background, barely visible, was a 7th figure. Same robes, same beads, same tired face. It was Yusef. Only the photo was taken 81 years before I met him. Sometimes I wonder what was really buried inside that pyramid. A man, a demon, a memory, or maybe something worse. An idea that not all things ancient are meant to be uncovered. Some tombs aren't built to honor the dead. They're built to hold them in. And God help us when the seals break. This incident has been shared anonymously and is being narrated by Dark Eerie Chronicles. I still don't talk about that trip much. Not because I want to forget it, I can't, but because no one ever believes me. Not really. It was the fall of 2017, early November, when I decided to take a solo trip to Egypt, but not the Egypt you see on postcards. No pyramids, no Giza, no camel rides outside Cairo. I was looking for something quieter, something off the map. That's how I ended up in Siwa, a small oasis town near the Libyan border, tucked deep in the western desert. It was remote, raw, and strangely peaceful. The kind of place where the silence feels heavy, like it's pressing on your skin. The town is surrounded by endless sand dunes and dotted with palm trees, olive groves, and mud brick houses. Salt lakes shimmer under the scorching sun, and the ruins of old temples peek out from the dust like forgotten memories. The air smelled like earth and salt and something ancient. Most tourists don't go that far, and understandably so. There are no luxury hotels, no touristy restaurants. Just local families, a few backpackers, and the kind of stories that don't make it into guidebooks. And it was one of those stories that started it all. I checked into a simple eco-lodge owned by a local woman named Amal. She was in her 50s, short, stern, but kind in her own way. Her daughter, Layla, was in her 20s and fluent in English. She wore long skirts, thick kohl around her eyes, and carried this quiet, watchful energy. The first few days were calm. I wandered through the old Shali fortress, soaked in a salt pool, and drank tea with a few local girls. Layla told me bits of Siwa's history, how Alexander the Great had once come here to visit the Oracle of Amun, how the oasis used to be cut off from the rest of Egypt for centuries. Then, one evening, as we sat on the rooftop sipping mint tea under a navy sky, Layla mentioned a local legend. "You've heard about the Sit al-Khalwa, right?" I shook my head. She leaned in closer. "They say she was a healer, hundreds of years ago, lived alone in the desert, never married. Men feared her, women went to her in secret. Some say she talked to jinn, others say she was one." Amal shot her a sharp look, but said nothing. "People still see her," Layla continued. "A woman in white, walking barefoot near the Mountain of the Dead after sundown." I laughed it off. "Like a ghost story?" She didn't smile. "It's not a story. My cousin saw her last year. He couldn't speak for a week after." A few days later, I got curious. Stupidly curious. I told Amal I wanted to visit the Mountain of the Dead. She looked uneasy. "Go in the morning, not later, and not alone." But of course, I didn't listen. I went in the late afternoon, just before sunset. The place was a crumbling necropolis, hundreds of ancient tombs carved into a rocky hill. The silence was overwhelming, broken only by the whisper of wind over sand. I stepped into one of the tombs. Cool air wrapped around me like fingers. On the walls, faded paintings of gods and rituals still clung to life. I turned on my flashlight and wandered deeper. That's when I heard it. A soft shuffle. Not behind me, but ahead. I stopped. "Hello?" Nothing. Just more silence. And then, a low, humming sound. Like someone singing under their breath, deep inside the tomb. I backed out quickly. The sun was dipping low, and I was suddenly aware of how far I was from anyone. As I rushed down the hill, I caught sight of her. A woman in a white robe, long black hair, bare feet dragging through the sand. She wasn't walking toward me. She was walking away, slowly, toward the salt flats. I should have gone back, but something pulled at me. Curiosity, or maybe something else. I followed. She led me toward a patch of marshy land behind the salt lake. The sun was gone now. Everything was gray-blue and flickering in the heat haze. And then she vanished. No footprints, no sound. Just gone. I felt a tightness in my chest, like something was wrong with the air itself. And then, I heard the humming again. Close. Behind me, I ran! That night, I had a dream. Or maybe it wasn't a dream. To this day, I am not sure. I was back in the tomb, but it was lit by hundreds of small oil lamps. A woman, same white robe, same long hair, was sitting cross-legged on the stone floor. She turned to look at me, and her face, no eyes, just smooth skin where they should have been. She opened her mouth, but instead of words, sand poured out. Dry, choking, endless sand. I woke up coughing. My throat was full of dust. There was sand in my bed, my boots, even inside my phone case. The next day, Layla wouldn't meet my eyes. Amal told me I had to leave. She didn't explain why, just said it wasn't safe for me to stay anymore. I checked into another guest house on the edge of town, and for 2 nights, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face. On the 3rd night, I met an old woman by the salt market. She looked me over and said, "You've been near her." I didn't deny it. She told me the Sit al-Khalwa doesn't haunt places, she haunts people, especially women who are open, vulnerable, alone. She chooses who she walks with, the old woman whispered. Geh. Strange things started happening around me. Lights flickered, electronics failed, my reflection in mirrors looked off, delayed. And then I started waking up in places I didn't remember going to. Once on the edge of the desert, once near the same tomb I'd visited. I kept finding white threads on my clothes. My hair started falling out in clumps. I was losing time. I finally left Siwa, took a bus to Marsa Matruh, then a train to Alexandria, then a flight back to Europe. But she followed. It's been years now. And still, sometimes, I hear the humming. In hotel rooms, in quiet cafes, even in my sleep. Sometimes I see a woman in white, just at the edge of my vision, always barefoot, always walking away. Doctors say it's stress, hallucinations, but I know better. The Sit al-Khalwa isn't just a story. She's real, and she doesn't just haunt Siwa anymore. She haunts me. And if you're listening to this and thinking of visiting Siwa, don't go looking for her. Because once she chooses you, she never leaves. You've been listening to Dark Eerie Chronicles. I'll see you in the next nightmare. Until then, keep your lights on.